I'm hoping that the hospitality is not broken, because if it is, then we're all in deep shit, because there's no one knocking on the door that really want to, be in this job for a long period of time, because they can see how hard it is.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Given the challenges in turning a profit in hospitality, it's always astounding to hear of venues that raise the bat on a decade of trade and beyond. Spice Temple, hidden beneath the legendary Rockpool Bar and Grill, has been dishing up an array of Chinese feasts for 15 years now. Andy Evans is the executive chef of Spice Temple in Sydney. Andy, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks, Huck. How are you?
I'm good, mate. 15 years, you're making me feel old.
Don't worry, I look in the mirror and I can see 15 years where it's gone.
Everyone's sort of talking about really sort of difficult times, and we're seeing restaurants close here and there. But what are things like for you at the moment at Spice Temple?
Look, it's like, you're certainly not the new kid on the block, and that sometimes can really hurt us in a city like Sydney, where the new is just everything. But what we've kind of learned is that, not to sort of put shit on any other restaurants that have closed, but is that we've tried to really sort of remain consistent with the food and the service and everything else, and try and keep it as professional and as amazing as we can. And hopefully they kind of tend to realise that they try something new and then they'll come back to us because they know that it's going to be good. We try and provide a really sort of affordable kind of price point for everyone, so it's not too expensive. And, we're trying to have a lot of different offerings. We've got the noodles in the bar and that sort of stuff. So we try everything, basically, just to keep everyone, everyone's sort of happy. And we hope that it makes it. We get it wrong every now and again, and which is pretty horrible. But more often than not, we keep people mostly happy.
There's been some interesting changes over the last 15 years, which we can get into. But more recently, your mate that was upstairs, Corey Costello, has left the building. What's it like for you? You guys were there sort of for the whole sort of distance with both restaurants. Is it different without him around?
Without Corey, it's a little bit different. I mean, it's really, you've got a guy who really appreciates and genuinely enjoys Asian food. So, having him pop down for lunch during the day when he pops down, when he jumps off the computer, he'd pop down and we just talk about Asian food and, what's around and who's doing what's good and what's tasty. And like without those people, you can get a little bit lost, because you'd like to chew the fat quite a bit. But it's sad to see him go. But there's always somebody else. Sort of, that's the way these businesses work. If I drop dead tomorrow, there's someone else that's going to take my place pretty quick. So you make sure that your business is set up so that you're not going to, if you have a weekend off, that the place doesn't fall to bits. But it's hard to see and go. But there's always someone else around the corner. But we still keep up and stay in touch.
The group changed significantly a couple of years ago as well. Change of ownership, and Neil Perry left the building as well. Was that an interesting time for you, having sort of been the head of the ship down there before and throughout that?
Yeah, I mean, Neil was always very, very good at sort of shielding everyone from everything that happens sort of at the very, very high end level of all that sort of stuff. So we really didn't know very much about it. So everyone was kind of just head down and carry on for the most part. And when Neil left, it was kind of like everyone could sort of see it happening, and he had just had enough and was pretty tired and been working for a very, very long time and probably needed a recharge and do something else for a little while. But it certainly did change the dynamic of how things sort of operated on our level, but really on day-to-day stuff, it kind of just meant that everyone just was like, "We'll carry on." I guess it's like big business sort of mentality where you just go like, it shouldn't really affect, if anyone leaves, it shouldn't really affect the business at all. It should just be able to carry on.
Well, you've been running the engine room there and leading from the front for so long now. What sort of changes have you seen within the restaurant and sort of what you do over those 15 years?
I guess as you start to sort of move up the food chain a little bit, you kind of have to you've got to learn how to let go a little bit and stop doing everything because you're just so used to doing it by yourself and making sure that it's done, and it's done really quickly and efficiently and properly. And you've got to start to learn to let go of that stuff and really focus all your energy on training up someone else who's underneath you, who's got the ability or the passion or the drive that wants to go and cut fish or meat, or learn how to use a wok or anything like that. That's a tough one to sort of step back. And my management skills probably could use a little bit of polishing with that. My computer skills suck. Doing spreadsheets and reading all that sort of stuff is challenging, but it's a really good, it's something that every chef should learn how to do, because you suddenly realize how much it costs to run a restaurant in Sydney, in Brisbane, in Melbourne, and everywhere else. It's horrendous, and you see the amount of wages that go out every single week, not just in their base rate, but their overtime. And it's really an eye opener for you to go, wow, like how are we going to best manage the quieter months, and how can we really reap the rewards in the really big months, which is over Christmas. But yeah, it's that change, and dealing with some really senior people that run the business, and how to not swear in a meeting and look presentable and all that sort of stuff.
Tell us a little bit about Spice Temple. Australia's got a great history with Chinese food, but really sort of Cantonese food, whereas Spice Temple delves much further and travels all around China. But where are the sort of the main regions and influences for the food that you do there?
So basically, we've always sort of managed to stay away from Canto food, and not because we don't like it. We love it, but we want to celebrate all the other regions that there are in China, and there's some pretty amazing ones, and ones that you sort of didn't even realize that were there, because they don't get a lot of exposure. So over the years, we've tried to really highlight some places that people won't really necessarily know very much about, and they get to try the food and they go, oh my God, I didn't realize that there was cumin in China. And you go, well, yeah, because you tell the story about the West and the Silk Road and all the Muslims that are coming over and coming through China and going into Beijing, and then all of a sudden you've got lamb and wheat and geographic sort of differences as well. So down the south you've got much more sort of temperate weather. So you've got rice and water and all that sort of stuff. Whereas in the north, it's much, much drier. So you've got a lot more wheat and flour and that sort of stuff. So yeah, the differences between the country of north, south, east and west is amazing. So it's just, there's a ton of food throughout the country that you need to sort of wrap your head around. And it's just amazing, the depth of it. It's from rich to poor, there's just so much that you've got to delve into, and it's really delicious because it's vinegary and salty and hot and crunchy and everything on the table at once. If you do it really, really well, it's just a fantastic way to eat.
Well, you're one of the most exciting proponents of that sort of food and celebration of it in Australia. But what was food like for you growing up? Did you have access to food like that? Like, where did it all begin for you for the Spice Temple route?
Well, I mean, I half grew up on a farm. Well, my parents separated, so I grew up halfway on a farm and then halfway in good old Barara, which is the upper North Shore town. And there's not a lot of food in Barara. There was one Italian restaurant, I think it had pizza, and there was Barara Chinese, which was your ubiquitous Chinese. But I got really a lot of fond memories of that Mongolian lamb and sizzling beef platters and honey king prawns and all that sort of stuff. It's pretty delicious when you grow up. But that's your reference point, and you kind of go, okay, well, when you get to working with a really good restaurant, which I did at Rockpool with Neil and all the other big guys that were there, you just get exposed to this really amazing side of the culinary world where you're talking about produce and where it comes from, and knowing a farmer and a fisherman and the grower and all this sort of stuff. And it's just it kind of hurts your head a little bit at first because there's all this information going in. But after a while, you start to really appreciate it and go, like, now when I go out and do any shopping or whatever else of food, maybe that's what I'm going to look at first. I'm going to look at where the lamb's from, or where the fish is from, or the veggies. And, at this time of year, you walk through Coles, and I guess that's probably been a really cool thing about the weather this year and last year with rains and everything else, that when people see that Coles and Woolies are struggling for iceberg and beans and all that sort of stuff, they kind of get it. They go, okay, jeepers, like this really does affect, the price and the quality of everything. So if it takes those guys to change people's minds, then that's a good thing in a lot of ways, because people can kind of appreciate that they can't have beans all year round.
In your early years, when you sort of got a foot in the door in the industry, what were the really important venues and people that you worked with?
We were just talking about that the other day, because we were chatting to a couple of guys about Tetsuyu's closing, and we were just thinking, Jesus, like back in '94 when I first started at Rockpool, there was Rockpool, Surge's place at the Four Seasons was up there. Key hadn't really sort of come along just yet, but Peter was still in the background a little bit. Oh, who else was there? It was Tets, and then all the Starlight guys from Bon Recordo, the crazy Armando. Yeah, like all those guys were like the front runners in the really high end, amazing stuff that we were doing. And it was pretty cool to sort of, you'd go for Friday night staff drinks, and then all the three, big restaurants would hang around and, talk about who's got the biggest pair of balls and who's better and who's faster and all that sort of stuff. It's so competitive.
As you started to build your career, do you have any stories of sort of key moments that really got you on track with what you wanted to do as a chef?
I don't really have those kind of super massive light bulb moments all the time, but you have a few which kickstart a lot of things, and that's probably being introduced to really good Asian food at Rockpool. Mike McInerney, he gives you a Glenloth pigeon that we used to do at Rockpool, which was a master stock pigeon, and then we used to just master stock it and then fry it. It was a lot more involved than that, but you'd master stock it and then fry it, and then you'd serve the whole bird, sans head, and then every now and again you'd get the head to chew on with a little bit of lime and Szechuan pepper. And it was just this incredible thing of going, I'm chewing on a pigeon's head and with some Szechuan pepper and lime. It was bloody delicious. And it was one of those things I'm like, man, this is amazing. And from then on, you kind of you dive into everything after that. You dive into whatever someone gives you, you should always. And then Khan was a big proponent of that, because he'd always say to me, like, you know what, you can push it on any food that you like. That's fine, as long as you try it and appreciate it first and where it comes from and who's made it. So I've taken that on board for a very long time, and I'll try anything and then reserve my right to hate it if I so wish. But a lot of the times it's just down to ignorance, and you go like, oh my god, what's that sound? Roasted grapes, that sounds disgusting. And then you try it and you go like, wow, with that duck, that's really quite amazing. So yeah, you can change your tune by being a little bit more open minded, but I think that's the biggest thing for a lot of young guys, is to go, no, don't say no to anything when you're starting the career, because you can close a lot of doors that are pretty amazing when they're open.
Tell us about the moment when you got the gig for Spice Temple.
Oh, it was pretty exciting. That was very, very exciting, actually, because I hadn't worked for Neil for quite a few years. I was working at China Doll, and I'd done a previous gig at the Light Brigade Hotel with Emma Woods for about a year. And then, we were just wandering around, and I forget how it all occurred. And I know that Neil sort of spoke to me one day and said, hey, listen, look, this is what I'm thinking of doing. I approached the guys at China Doll, Frank, who's been a long-time friend, Frank Sheck, been a long-time friend, really cool guy, Scottish Hongkonese chap. And then we just sat down and I chatted, and I said, look, this is the opportunity. And he said, look, you'd be mad if you said no, like get amongst it and do it. And those guys were fantastic in those times. Bart or Pete and those guys, Barchi and those guys would always say, look, if an opportunity like that came along, you should grab it. And then, essentially we went to China in April 2008, and then just ate for a week and a half. It was full on. But you've only got sort of 2 weeks while you're there, so you've just got to make the most of it. So it's 2 lunches and 2 dinners every day. And then, came back and then came back with about 250 recipes and photos of things that we wanted to get on. And then I think Neil sort of very, very, graciously took it down to about 130 on the menu. And then after that, we came down to about sort of 90 things on the menu. But he's just like that. He just wants to have everything. So you kind of go, yep, cool. We'll make it happen somehow. But it was amazing. And you go through all the testing processes and recipes, and because everything that we had brought back Nothing came with a recipe. It was just an idea and a flavor profile that we kind of thought, oh yeah, that's got a bit of this in here and there and then so we sat upstairs in the test kitchen at Rockpool, I think for about 2 weeks, and just while Neil would cook, I would stand there and write down recipes and notes about something, and how much of this and a splash of this would equal how many mils and all that sort of stuff. So it was a really cool kind of creative process where the other guys would then jump in and taste it and go. It freaked everybody out at the start because it was so different to whatever had been around before.
Before we dive into that, take us back to that sort of 2-week trip that you were on. Were there any experiences that really stick with you from that trip in China?
I think just basically you look at the amount. It was my first opening into seeing really regional food being done properly. So you'd look at Hunanese food and you go to a Hunanese restaurant and you'd see things and you'd be just like, there's still MSG involved, but I was just like more, there wasn't huge amounts of MSG involved. It was more about, heaps of flavor on everything. Pickled chilies and salted chilies and all the different varieties of them, dried, fermented, and every other way that you could possibly imagine. The use of Sichuan peppercorns, and whether they're roasted and ground or whether they were fried whole and used as a really fragrant kind of base flavoring. It was just amazing to sort of see the difference in color and texture and everything else that would go along with it. You go to eat at a Xinjiang or Uyghur restaurant that's from the west of China, and you're having fried flatbread and fried noodles and whole roasted lamb and lamb ribs and potatoes and all that sort of stuff. Really gutsy, hearty food that's really meant to sort of stick to your ribs, but it's not pretty, but it's delicious. And just to see the different people when you're around there, you know what I mean? Like you see the faces of these guys when you're in these restaurants and they look kind of sort of Middle Eastern, but they're talking to you in Chinese and it's totally freaking you out. You're a little white boy from Burao. And, from Beijing again and seeing the food in Beijing and then down to Shanghai and seeing, like the wealth that was in Shanghai, I was totally blown away with. There's so much money in there. And then Hong Kong is just a super cool place to go and let loose and have fun and just eat and drink yourself to when you got nothing left, really.
That period of time that you spoke of where you were experimenting and writing recipes with Neil, are there any sort of really standout dishes from that period that have survived on the menu or that you've used over the years?
Definitely. Like most of them are still here. So the menu that we've got coming up for June, which is going to be the 15-year birthday menu, which has got all the old favourites on there. So there's the classic century egg with silken tofu that's going to be on there. We've got some lamb and fennel spring rolls that used to be a northern style pan fried dumpling. That's going to be a spring roll again. The stir fried prawns, Szechuan fish, all it's basically like the greatest hits of spicy tea in the last 15 years are on the menu, and it's basically just sort of meant for everyone to go, wow, I remember that back in 2009 when I first tried this dish. This was hopefully it's the same for you now and 15 years later, but that's the kind of vibe that we're going for this, is just say, look, this is how amazing and different it was when we first kicked off.
Tell us about that period when you first kicked off. Do you have any stories? I mean, what was it like when you launched this restaurant, the subterranean sort of space that no one could find originally? What was it like?
Yeah, crazy, bonkers. Like, it wasn't done before, but Bar and Grill was still under construction. We had just opened up. No one had used induction woks before. There was just, it was crazy down there. And, Neil's energy is amazing. It's just at a million miles an hour. And we had a really big, massive team down here in the kitchen, on the floor as well. We had Barchi running the place. So we had and Chris and Denier, a bunch of really old school guys who have been around for ages and very, very good at their jobs. It was crazy. It was pretty hard. The training that was involved in making sure that the guys on the floor could articulate what we wanted them to offer to the customer. So it wasn't just about saying, oh, look, here's a menu, pick 5 things and then let's go. It's about them understanding that the flavor profile that they want to have out of the menu, going, you want to have something that's cool and refreshing, and then hot and spicy, and then something that's mild, and then something that's dry and fragrant, and then something else that might be a hot pot, and then some greens and rice and something else. And it was about making sure that the guys understood that was really important for everyone to eat. Otherwise, it would just be this massive flavor punch to the face, and people wouldn't get it. And it was about not being just, really heavy handed with chilies, but being really smart with them, but making everything really spicy and hot at the same time, but not making it so that it would just be, blow your head off kind of thing. And people kind of really got that vibe that we were getting. And we put a lot of effort into making sure that the guys were trained, and that was probably twice a week with training. They do wine training at least once a week, cocktail training at least once a week, and that was another big thing that Lyndon Pride had brought over from overseas and had made the cocktail list pretty amazing. And then there were a bunch of guys in the bar that were just really very, very good at what they did, very charismatic, and became a pretty hit place to be.
It sure did. It was packed all the time. But you must have had some pretty interesting characters come through for dinner. Do you have any stories of some of the more well-known people coming for dinner?
You tend to get your celebrities and everybody and that sort of stuff coming through, but we tended to make sure that from the outset we kind of made the decision to not get too worked up about them, because we wanted them to have somewhere where they could switch off and not get bothered by anybody else. So we actually have there's a rear door entrance into Spice and to Bar and Grill as well that you can take, which comes down into the loading dock, and they can walk into the restaurant that way and park themselves with whoever else, whether it's Beyonce or whoever else, and just sit in a corner and have dinner and be able to sort of relax and switch off. And then the guys on the floor would get a real big buzz out of that, because they could talk to these people like they were just a customer, not Beyonce. So it was a really big buzz. But we've had like the amount of weirdos and everything else that we've had come through the restaurant in the kitchen and on the floor. Like it's just bonkers. Like the list of it, I was thinking of it just the other day. This one, we had this girl. She was Thai. Her name was Chinjira. Her English name was B, and she was hilarious. And her accent was so thick that it was very, very hard to understand her, but she was quite good at what she did. Anyway, she was a bit of a loose unit and loved to tell a joke and all that sort of stuff. So one day she had gone home to Thailand, came back with a Louis Vuitton knife roll wrap, and was the 2IC, and I looked at her and I said, "Hey, like that's not a real knife roll. Like you're not going to carry knives in it because it's fake." And she goes, "No, it's fine. No, it's all good. It'll be fine. I'll take it to TAFE and it'll be good." I said, "Well, just be really careful because your knife will pop through it and that'll be it." She goes, No, it's fine." So 2 days later, we get a phone call at I think at about 8:30 in the morning. 2IC and myself going, "What's going on?" She's screaming on the phone. She's had a knife roll in her hand and over her shoulder, and it's got quite low. She's on the bus and she's standing up on the bus, and the bus has lurched to a stop, and the knife, one of the knives, paring knives, has gone into her thigh. And she sat there and she's screaming in Thai/English, "I've been stabbed, kind of thing." Everybody around her is freaking out, right? Because she's on this packed, peak hour bus, and everyone's freaking out. "Oh my God, there's some sort of crazy knife wielding lunatic on the bus," but it wasn't. It was her. So eventually there's police and then paramedics come, they patch her up and all the rest of it. And she rocks up to work with this massive patch around her leg. And she goes, "Oh, I think I should go home." We're like, "Yeah, mate. Yeah, you should probably go home and get a new knife roll while you're at it." "Okay." And like every couple of months, someone would just do something silly, and you shake your head and go, "You know what? I'd rather." But thinking back at it now, I'd rather have worked with a bunch of loose units and clowns than not. So I'm very happy for it.
Well, 15 years, you must have some stories of things going wrong in the kitchen, especially when you're feeding so many people. Do you have any sort of funny stories of crazy things happening in the kitchen?
Oh, just, we've had mud crabs escape. We've had people burn and cut themselves. We've had people fall into pots of chicken stock on the way through, and you look at it and you go, "How, what are you doing?" So like one guy decided that we have, like, next to the cooler room, there's a set of dunnage racks, which are racks that are 200 mils above the ground, and with all your stock pots and everything go on them while you're trying to strain them. So one guy decided that it was a long way around because all the fruit and veg had come in. So he decided that he would step over a 100-litre stock pot to try and get to the pool room to get something missed. This guy was not very bright, mind you. Okay, so he didn't last very long, and missed the step on the other side and put his foot into the stock pot, and then came out obviously screaming and carrying on and everything else. But it's like, Mike, how have you survived for this long, my friend, without killing yourself? Heaps of little things like that. Not too many really serious ones. I mean, it's a burn, and then we've patched him up and he made his pretty quick recovery. But there's always the everyday stuff. I think you kind of find that keeps you going. Just a few clowns here and there, and it's the general kind of you lose people and you gain people again, and it sucks a little bit to lose the good ones, but you generally find they've made a pretty good little stamp on your timeline to keep you happy.
How much have you changed in the last 15 years, being such an important part of this amazing restaurant in Sydney?
I think you change. You well, definitely as you're older, you get grumpier, but then. In saying that, everyone's saying that I've mellowed in the years, and I think that's probably very true. When I think about when I first started, and someone would make a mistake, you'd tend to, lose your shit and just really berate someone, because it's really important that the standards are really kept where they're supposed to be and really high, and everyone's striving to make sure everything's perfect and amazing all the time. And you realise after a while that you're starting to rip through chefs and waiters and management kind of go, let's just make sure we sort of check on Andy's mood today, make sure that everything's going to be fine. And now that I think back on that, I think that that's just really silly. When, with a bit more coaxing and a bit more kind of training and a bit of patience, you can get a lot more out of people than you can with screaming and yelling at them. So I think I've definitely mellowed over the years, and but you still kind of there's discipline and everything has to be great in the kitchen. But you tend to, instead of, losing your nana at someone who's made a mistake, you've got to realise that maybe it was an honest mistake and they've just fucked up. But, and it doesn't mean that they need to get, totally broken into the ground. But there's that sort of stuff where you got to work with people and go, and I think, to be honest, the biggest change in myself is just seeing how you've just got 10,000 different personalities walking into the restaurant every single day. You know what I mean? You've got people that have got mental health problems, people who have got problems at home, boyfriends, girlfriends, families, sick parents, and you've got to kind of really be really aware that these people might be in a much worse position today than you are, even though you might be tired and cranking over it. But they're dealing with something on their level, which is just as important as what you're dealing with. But you've got to kind of step back and go, okay, cool. I'm going to give this person a little bit of space. And we sort of try to tell everyone that comes in to say, listen, look, if that's happening, can you please just walk in the door and just have a little quiet word to a few key people and say, listen, look, today is really horrible, or this is what's happened, and blah, blah, blah. I'm feeling a little bit, fragile. Can everyone just, give you a little bit of room? And everyone picks up on it straight away and goes, okay, yeah, cool, no worries. I'll, whatever you need to get done, give me some of your jobs. I'll finish that fish for you. I'll do that for you. Go for a break or do whatever else you got to go and do. And I find that you develop a really strong team because of that. And a lot of the guys have a lot more respect for you than otherwise.
Well, you've created, one of the best dining experiences in Sydney. What do you love about what you do?
I think it's the people and the customers that you still get coming back, which is amazing. After 15 years, we've got regulars that have been coming here for 15 years. Some of them once a week, or some of them twice a week. And you see them coming back through, and they just go, I went here, I went there, and it was good, but I still love coming back to Spicy Tea because I know that it's going to be great. I think, I don't know. I love the fact that we've got some really amazing people. Even though it's changed, the hospitality industry has changed for the workforce. There have been times where we've been really short staffed and really lean, and it's really hard on everyone because everyone's doing sort of quite a few extra shifts because you just have to, because you're open and you've got to do it. But to just sort of see the investment in people pay off when you put a lot of time and effort into them is amazing. And I think that I'm hoping that the hospitality is not broken, and because if it is, then we're all in deep shit, because there's no one knocking on the door that really want to be in this job for a long period of time, because they can see how hard it is. You've got to give up a lot of stuff, and that's great. But if you can turn that around and go, yeah, you do, but look at the rewards that you get out of it at the end of it, they far outweigh the cost of working on a weekend.
Well, Andy, it's always a pleasure to catch up. Congratulations on 15 years. Hope you rack up another 15. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Huck. Good on you.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.